Good morning, everybody. Welcome behind the scenes here at Jamie Riddler Studios. I am Jamie. It is Tuesday. Wah! Already I can feel the way that this week represents the full transition into my big project being our home reno. And it's interesting because I teach a practice on Monday mornings. We get together for Mindful Mondays and we center ourselves, then we tap into our imagination, and then we start to vision our week ahead and plan it based on what's actually important to us. And as I was doing that, I could just really see how many of the things that were ready to take my attention, to draw my energy, were about our home. And so it is happening. So you will need to get used to seeing mess. This is me. I'm sorting through all of my magazines. One of the things I am going to pack some magazines straight up to go into storage, but I have a lot and they take up a lot of space and they're heavy. And so what I'm doing is going through maybe 25% of them I will pack and leave as is, and 75% I'm going through and just grabbing pages and images that I think I'll use sometime in the future as ephemera in my studio yearbook, for a dream board, for a collage project, something that either in its subject matter grabs my heart and my attention, or in its colors or in its textures look like it would be beautiful to put on my collage palette. And so that is in process now, and I'll also be planning out from now. We anticipate moving sometime in the beginning of April, which is actually not that far away right now. We're almost at 1 month, so I'll be planning out what needs to happen in each of those weeks so that we have a bit of an not so stressful time or things getting crushed at the end. Things always get crushed at the end. So if you plan hoping to not make that so, at least you will lessen the push in those last few moments. So Justin and I are going to sit down and talk about, okay, what's our packing procedure from now over the next 4 weeks so we feel ready to go. One of the things I worked on this weekend was something that I know we all love deeply, which is books. And we've had lots of conversations about what books do you keep, what books do you release, and how hard it is to let go of these precious beauties. And I got a metaphor this weekend that changed everything for me. First, let me say this. One of the most important things for me in determining what books I would keep or get rid of was to recognize what are my reading habits. Not the reading habits that I wish I had, but the reading habits that I actually have. And one of the things I know is that now I listen to audiobooks. I don't find I have a lot of time to sit and read. And even when I do feel like I want time to read, I am so sedentary for most of the day doing work here behind the computer to create stuff for the studio that I want to be moving. And so audiobooks have changed everything for me, and I can go for a daily walk and listen. So whereas last year I think I probably read a total of 3 books over the year, and that's why the Creative Living bookshelf sort of disappeared, even though I know it is a big favorite. I wasn't finding time to read. And then now I'm reading 3 or 4 books a month again, and it feels so very good, but I'm listening to them. So what are the books that I want to have on my shelf? Well, there are certain kind of books, nonfiction books, and this may horrify you, but certain nonfiction books, for me to be really engaged with them, I pull out my highlighter and I sit there and I journal with them and I muck around in them and I engage with them in a very active and physical way. I'm a kinesthetic person. It matters to me to have physical contact with something. And so those books I will also keep. So I'm listening to a lot of nonfiction books. Some nonfiction books I'm taking the time to read in physical form because I need that process of engagement. And then fiction books I'm mostly reading on my Kindle. And so that ends up actually being very few physical books, doesn't it? And so one of the things I did was when I had a book that I knew I wanted to read, but that I would be even more likely to listen to, the first thing I did was look it up on Scribd. And if you haven't discovered Scribd, please let me introduce it to you. I will leave you a link below. I think they generally have a free 30 days at the beginning. But if you sign up through my link, there is a benefit to me, which is for every person who I think comes on and in their paid subscription, I end up getting a free month. So, but whether you go through me or you just type in SCRIBD, please do. There are ebooks, there are audiobooks, and it is such a rich resource. All my sisters and I are on it. It's been a game changer for me. So what I did was take books that I hadn't got around to reading yet, that I thought maybe I'll get around to it if I listen to it as an audiobook, and I checked if it was on Scribd, and if it was, I saved it to a list to read, and I donated the book so somebody else can read the physical form. Now, what was the metaphor I was talking about earlier? There are some books that are like family. And so I started to think that my personal library, like the one that's near, and this is like Jamie's library, that the books that should be in it are the books that have come to be like family to me. So I will never get rid of my copy of Lord of the Rings. I will never get rid of The Secret Garden. I will never get rid of The Artist's Way. These are books that are in my heart. These are books that are my family. And that metaphor really helped me, in particular because one of the things I'm learning as I go through this process of self-exploration as we do this renovation. How can this renovation, one of the things I always say is what we create creates us. So how can I be very intentional in what I'm creating and what it is also teaching me about who I am and who I'm becoming? And one of the things I've decided is I don't need to judge how I am. I don't need to change how I am. If I accept as long as I'm not hurting anybody, then why not work with it? So for example, I get emotionally attached to things. I do. Right or wrong, whether I should or shouldn't, what the minimalists say, what the declutterers say, what anybody says, I get attached to things. And they mean something to me. I layer them with meaning and memories. And I know a lot of people say, well, you still have the memory, but it is not necessarily true. There are a million zillion things in our minds that don't come to the foreground until we see that thing. Like I love having memory boxes. Like I love having a little box and opening it up, and in it it's like, those are the bells that Brew, who used to babysit me, those are the bells that Brew knitted me when I was just a girl. Or there's the pin I wore when I was in high school. I love that. Again, I'm a kinesthetic person. There's something that brings me back. So that's who I am. So if I am emotional about my things, then an emotional metaphor can help. So all of these things have been incredibly helpful to me. First, just the practical. How do I read? What do I read and how do I read it? Let me build a system around that. And then just respecting the fact that I am an emotional being who connects emotionally to the books that I read. How can I have a metaphor that is truly helpful to me? So now if I read a book and I love it, I think it's wonderful, and it lights me up, but I can let it go. I have the memory of it. I have the joy and experience of reading it, and I'm happy to pass it along for somebody else to be inspired by, to receive joy by, to get insight through. That satisfies that emotional part in me too. So yay, like I love you, and someone else is going to love you too. And then also to say, yeah, but there are some things that are near and dear to my heart that are like family, and I am going to have those on my bookshelf, and they will be a blessing in my life. And that is really working for me. That really helped me. I packed 4 boxes and I got rid of 3 bags of books. And that just felt good. So some of the books, not all of the books I kept were my family, my personal library. Some of them were books I hadn't read yet that I knew I would read in that format. And I will only know after I've read it which category they fall into. And it has been really helpful for me. So I hope that it is really helpful for you. The other thing that, as you know, many of you, if you've been here for a while, I've been working really, really hard on creating a schedule that supports me deeply in honoring what is most important to me in my life and in my work. And so one of the things I'm doing, you'll notice that the BTS was probably here a little bit later today, is I'm refining that schedule. And I noticed that as I put some movement practices onto my schedule, my writing practices fell off. And writing is really, really important to what I have to share in the world and also to my well-being. I feel so stifled and bottled up when I don't get enough time to write. And so I am making a commitment to getting up a bit earlier and also to getting time in for my movement practice and for my writing before I do anything else. And so that means instead of the BTS being here at 9:30-ish, 10 o'clock-ish, I'll be filming at that time. So it'll come in a little bit later, but hopefully it'll be even a little bit clearer or well thought out because I'll have been doing my writing in the morning. Everything is changing. Everything here in the studio and in my life is up for renewal. And so I get to choose in a brand new way what I want to keep, what is right for right now. And that is the positive medicine of disruption, is that it shakes things up and it gives you a chance to reevaluate things with a new perspective. That doesn't always feel good, but it often is good to give us the chance to say, in my life right now, right this minute, not based on my habits, not based on the path I've been on, but in my life right now, what is truly important to me? And how do I build a structure in terms of my space, in terms of my time, in terms of my resources, so that all of those resources support what is truly and deeply important to me. For those of you who are members of the studio, and I hope you are, if you're not, head on over to openthedoor.ca and join. This weekend I sent out an email and it included this question, this really, really powerful question, which I am noodling deeply, which is, what do you want your life to look and feel like? What do you want your life to look and feel like? And by look, that's not like look to other people. We're not talking about on Instagram or on Pinterest, what do you want your life to look like? It means for you, when you wake up in the morning or you go to sleep at night and you're looking at your life, what would please you? What would delight you? What would move you? What would fulfill you? What would you feel proud of? Last night as I went to sleep, I had really fulfilled my schedule. I had hit all the to-dos that I wanted to do. I had the balance between restful things, productive things, and fun things, playful things, joyful things. And I went to bed, and just as I was falling asleep, I thought, really proud of myself today. And that, I got to tell you, was a powerful and positive feeling. And it's an interesting thing to think about. If you imagine yourself falling to sleep at night thinking, I'm really proud of myself today, what do you imagine that day might have been like? Take that to your journal. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you've got some insight, if you've enjoyed this time together, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, click that bell so you get a little notice that says, hey, the BTS is here, especially because it's going to be changing time slightly. So if you're used to the regular time, that might be a great thing to do. When you do that, it makes such a difference to this channel. It really, really does. It gives it deeper roots and broader branches and allows this work to touch more people. And when you do that, it touches my heart so very deeply. Thanks so much for being here, and